little break.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing fantastic today. It's Monday, April 20th, 2025, and I'm currently in Calgary right now with Shawn Buckley, which is probably 3 or 4 feet away from me. So that's good. What's going on? Yeah, you're not getting anything. That's normal because you're not muted. Yeah, because I'm giving the sound feed for the other guy, so that's good. So I'm going to give him some sound for him so he can understand that we have sound on there, right? So thanks for tuning in. Think that the rooms are getting set up right now. Talk about med beds. I don't know. They're going to talk about it. I don't know.
Somebody has a bag that they left here with keys in it. Would the lovely person please come and claim it? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to go home tonight. Okay, could everybody please take a seat? Anybody whistle? Yay, thank you.
Let's grab a seat.
Oh. I'm warm. Well, we have a great group of people here tonight, and thank you all for coming. My name is Leslie, and welcome to the April edition of Act Now. So if everybody could please turn their cell phones off or put it on airplane mode or something so that it doesn't go off when our speaker's on stage. That would be most appreciated. Bathrooms out to the front and to the left. And admission donations are much appreciated. They help with all the expenses that we have every month. And a great big thank you to all our vendors who come out every month. You are awesome and an asset to the evening. And thank you to our lovely ladies and to Chris who videos this every single month. Last but not least, thank you to Habibis. It truly is a lovely place to be able to hold something like this. And we have the facility, lots of parking, and space to grow in. So thank you to all the wonderful people who aided us by registering tonight. It made the lineup go so much faster, and I know the ladies at the front really appreciated that as well. Our Pay It Forward fund has $210 in it and has been used by various people over the last few months. So I'm delighted that it is serving the purpose that it was intended for. It pays for guests who would love to come but have limited finance. So thank you everyone for your generosity. Tonight is our last night to register for the referendum, so if you haven't done so, please feel free to go up front and sign up as well. And thank you to all the wonderful canvassers who have been instrumental in making this happen. So all those who heard, all the canvassers, stand up. Come on, stand up. All the canvassers, stand up. That's who you need to applaud. Yay. So last month, Jason Levine brought us the incredible Sean Hartman story of the young hockey lad who died 33 days after being jabbed. For those who missed what's called the shot, Jason is bringing it once more to Calgary this Friday. He will be at the Military Museum on Crowchild Trail on April 24th, which is this Friday. There's a $20 admission, and the movie is both heartbreaking and heartwarming. So if you're interested in going, you can please register at supportSean, SEAN.ca. Okay. Now, some of you received an email from me. King Cattle Company, who we dealt with last year, and a number of people ordered their big boxes of beef. Well, they had their hamburger or ground beef on sale, and at $10 a pound if we could get a group together that wanted to buy some as well. So I thought, well, if I want it, I'm certainly sure there are other people who want the same thing. So I put out an email. Little did I know, I got slaughtered with all sorts of people who wanted some. We're up to about 250 pounds right now. So it was great. Now, please understand, I do not make a cent from this at all. I did it because I wanted beef, and I couldn't order 80 pounds because I don't have a freezer big enough to put it all into. So that's what ended up happening. Now, I'm going to send this around because there's a number of people who actually knew about it tonight, and I didn't have the time to register anybody. So if you're interested, please put your name, your email, your phone, and how many pounds. It's a 10-pound minimum because it makes it much easier for them than 1 pound of this and 2 pounds of that. So I'm going to pass this around, and you can fill it in, and we'll start over here. And if you don't get it along the way, look for it because this is what it looks like, okay? And then Kirsten from King Cattle will call this week for payment from you and how it will be delivered. And then once the information goes to her, I step out of the picture, okay? After our guest finishes, please remain seated for a few announcements at the end. There's nothing I can do about it. Blaine, I thought you were going to do something about that. Okay, I find it ironic that we should be ordering quality meat from a rancher on the same night that Shawn is here, and to have a conversation with us on similar topics. We all know the government is wanting and trying to shut down these wonderful, independent men and women. As we move forward in time, it will be imperative that we support our local farmers and ranchers as the government introduces more questionable food items like crickets, fake meat, and the latest fake milk. How many here take supplements? I'm just curious. I know I do. Well, there's your answer right there, Shawn. So anyways, you are in for a treat and a wake-up call with our speaker tonight. Shawn Buckley is that rare person who keeps you on the edge of your seat. He is a disruptor. God, I only know that one really well myself. He challenges our conceptions of rights and laws by forcing us to view them differently. Shawn has earned the right to challenge the political theater we call Canada. In his 32 years of practicing law, he has run over 1,500 trials. Many of Mr. Buckley's trials have been key right cases, such as the True Hope case featured in the movie Epiphany, The True Hope Battle, or the David and Colette Stephan case featured in the movie The People versus David and Colette Stephan. And both of those were here back about 2 months ago, giving their story as well. So Shawn is an expert in health rights and human health laws. He is a founder of the Natural Health Protection Association, or NHPPA.org, and Canada's leading citizen health rights organization. Shawn has testified in both the House of Commons and the Senate as a constitutional expert and is also an expert in health law. As well, he is a key founder and organizer of the National Citizens Inquiry and was lead counsel for the NCI while it was an independent inquiry. Prepare to be challenged by Shawn. So let's give a big Calgary-sized welcome for Shawn Buckley.
Yeah, thanks, Max. You're all set? I'm set. What's that? I think I'll just use that one if need be. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and a little better there? Okay, thanks. How many people watched the National Citizens Inquiry? Okay, for those of you who didn't, you need to start watching that. If you watch 3 full days, you will not be the same. And you'll know what I mean afterwards. I promise you, you won't be the same. So just pick a full day. Don't do, video after video. Just pick a full day and watch. How many people here have read our Constitution? Okay, and now there were some people laughing there because they know, right? So now, for those of you who put up your hands, you can get at the government agent's office our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's a very small part of our Constitution. So that doesn't count. Like if you've read part of our Constitution, that doesn't count. That'd be like reading, 1 out of 20 chapters. So like who's, started at the British North America Act and just plowed through and read the whole thing? Okay. So I think we have 4 people in this room. Okay? So, how many people here own land? Own land? Oh, wow. A lot of people have been fooled here. Okay, good to know. We'll go into that. I'm trying to figure out where to go. We wrote kind of a thing up, because you have to well before, that I'd be touching on, some constitutional issues, and I definitely want to go there. And then also on some natural health issues, and I kind of want to go there, but I also want to go into how we don't own land. I think that would be pretty important. So how many of you think you have sovereignty over your own bodies? No, come on. Like, let's not be a tough crowd here. So let's just talk about the Constitution. Let's segue into that. But before we do, especially if I get into the UNDRIP and get into what's going on with the dairy farmers and how our next attack now, we're in the active phase of getting rid of the family farm. Because of those of you that are familiar with, the One Health policy and which the 15-minute cities are part of, they've been quite clear they want to clear people off the land. And you can't just say to all the farmers, we're gonna clear you into the land. All those gross, apartment buildings we're building, those aren't for city folk, those are for you. To make this work, you got to get rid of a lot of them first. So you got to get rid of the small family farm, and we're in the process of doing that. So I'm going to talk about some things that are going to upset you, because I think we're a lot closer to the end game than most of us thought, and myself included. Like, it was about a month ago where it was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I didn't appreciate how close we are to that full-blown communist takeover. So where we could wake up and all of a sudden you don't own your property. And then you're stuck. So, I won't name the person, but somebody Teresa and I were having a conversation with last week in Ontario, and it's like the person said, yeah, that runway to leave Canada is a lot shorter than I thought it was. And I wasn't even thinking that I should be having that conversation, in my family. But now I'm thinking that we do. So let's get to the Constitution. There's no other document that affects your life more than our Constitution. There's not a single document that affects your life more. And we're all forced to go through like 12 or 13 years of government indoctrination. I mean public school, right? We're forced. They control the curriculum. Even if you're homeschooled, they control the curriculum. You would think they would have us starting in kindergarten reading the document that affects us the most. Wouldn't you? Like, when I was a little kid, I went to Disneyland, and you walked away being proud to be an American. They were touting their Constitution so much and their history and their political myths. But not in Canada. Well, we push our political myths. I'll talk about that in a second. We've got some real fun ones. We've got some zingers. But we don't talk about our Constitution. We don't have our citizens read our Constitution. Do you think that maybe they just overlooked it? Like, for your whole life, your 12 or 13 years of public school and maybe your college and university, do you think they just overlooked, oh yeah, that's an important document. Maybe we should mention it once or twice. Did they just forget? So, yeah, so let's talk about, does anyone know what a political myth is? Like, so every country, every polity, we kind of have to have a common belief. And we call them political myths. And myths can be true, they can be not true. That doesn't matter, but we need a common belief. Like in Germany after the First World War, a sizable part of the population, there was a common belief that the country was betrayed, which set the stage for some other things. In Canada, we've got a bunch of common political beliefs which make us love this country. I think I said that word without smiling, country. And, we, like literally, like every war, our young people line up to go and fight for our country, for our political myths. And in fact, how many of you think we're approaching a war real soon? Russia, right? Like that's the one I'm worried about. So I'm quite worried about that one. And the propaganda machine will go full bore, and how we've got to fight for our rights and our system and our freedom, and we're all at risk and all of this stuff. And so these myths are really important. My favorite myth, well, are we a democracy? Yeah, but you knew I was going to say we weren't. But it's a wonderful myth, isn't it? That we're a democracy. Well, what's a democracy is actually a state where the citizens get together and they make the decisions on a majority basis that they think are in the common good. So they basically have the power to make laws. That's what a democracy is. So at best, we're an elected autocracy. But how many of you on a federal matter has had a direct say in anything, important or unimportant? So why do we call ourselves a democracy? And we do, but that's a political myth. It's really, really convenient. So, well, at least we're a representative government, right? We elect, would we agree with that? Like, I'm just wondering, see, now you guys won't agree with anything, right? Is the sky blue above the chemtrails? So, okay. So, another political myth is that we elect representatives in our area that then actually represent that area, right? Like, so I don't know what my area is called federally, but I know who my MP is, and there's a geographical location, and we elect that person. But that person doesn't represent that riding. Have you ever been consulted to go, okay, what do you want, how do you want me to vote on this issue? In fact, they're not allowed to vote according to how the people that elected them want to, unless it's called a free vote. It's an exceptional thing. So like, let's say it was a matter of conscience. They might allow a free vote, but otherwise they have to vote along the party lines. That's why they have a party whip that keeps them in line. That's why if they vote against the party, they get kicked out. But yet we all understand that political myth that we elect people in our ridings to represent us. Do you understand that that's a myth? Okay, well, at least you'll agree Canada's a country, right? Okay, yeah. So I had to actually bring I've had this copy of the Constitution probably for about 30 years. And I just felt obligated to bring it because it's more powerful if I actually read to you and the document that you won't read yourself. But most people don't understand. So, like the American Constitution, if I said to you, okay, like a group of people got together called the Founding Fathers, and they drafted a document that actually governs how that nation functions, the institutions. So what institutions they have, what powers each institution has, blah, blah, blah. So what is Canada's constitution? Did we do that? Because we've got a political myth about, the 5 provinces getting together and having a conference and we've got a political myth about the same thing. But what is our Constitution? So our Constitution is a collection of statutes passed by the Parliament of the United Kingdom, plus some orders and councils of the United Kingdom Cabinet. Did most of you know that? Okay, well this is a more educated... I can be in a crowd where not a single person understands that every single letter of our Constitution is a foreign law, and the United Kingdom Parliament is perfectly free to repeal our Constitution, is perfectly free to amend our Constitution. In the Constitution Act of 1982, passed by the United Kingdom Parliament, they put in a mechanism where we could also amend it, but it's practically impossible to do that. That would be like you having to pay $500,000 a person to move to another country. It's practically impossible, isn't it? So for most, so then we really wouldn't be free to leave Canada. We'd lose that mobility privilege that we believe we have in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So, and let's just talk about, most statutes have kind of like a preamble to tell you what some of the purposes of this are. And the main part of our Constitution is called the British North America Act of 1867. And there's 4 paragraphs in this is what this act, so the biggest part of our Constitution, there's 4 paragraphs saying what they're for. I want to just read one of them to you. And so they're talking about these provinces getting together and this Dominion of Canada being formed. And whereas such a union would conduce to the welfare of the provinces and promote the interests of the British Empire. Okay, so this document is here to help us promote the interests of the British Empire. So, in the United States, they've got the president. The president is the executive power. There's different powers in government. So you've got like the power to pass laws, which now we call like the legislative power. But if you read old legal treaties, that term has a broader term. But now let's just say the legislative power is the power of the state to pass laws. And then you have the courts as a separate branch of government to interpret those laws. But now you have the executive that basically then enforces the laws. And in the United States, that's the president. So you got Congress and Senate, they pass laws. You got the courts interpret the laws. And you have the president to enforce the laws. So, in Canada, we'll elect a government. And so we'll have a prime minister and we'll have a cabinet. Are they our executive, the prime minister and cabinet? Do they enforce the laws? Who's our executive? No, it's not the Privy Council. It's not, but you're close. And first of all, how many people have heard of the Privy Council? Okay, and I can be in a room where I haven't heard of any. But I'll read Section 9 of the British North America Act. The executive government and authority of and over Canada is hereby declared to continue and be vested in the Queen. Okay, so our executive is the King. And now some of you thought, okay, well, the executive is the Privy Council office. Well, I can understand that confusion because this document then goes on to create the Privy Council office, because clearly the King can't administer Canada, and the King's representative, the Governor General, can't administer Canada. You got to have some help here. So our Constitution, this British statute, creates an office called the Privy Council office to help the King run Canada. So that's why and who's more powerful in Canada? Who has more executive power, the Prime Minister or the Clerk of the Privy Council? I think it's the Clerk. And most of you haven't even heard. Who's the Clerk of the Privy Council today? Ooh, see? Isn't that interesting? And have you ever heard of the Clerk of the Privy Council in the media? Have you ever heard of the Privy Council in the media? No. Isn't that interesting? So, okay. We'll carry on with... so, now the Privy Council office, our convention is that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Ministers are members of the Privy Council office while they're sitting. So, but our Constitution makes it clear the Privy Council office consists of members appointed by the Governor General. And there's a lot of permanent members. I shouldn't say permanent. I mean, they do come and go, but they're not elected. And they set, they basically set the standard. Now, we have a federal cabinet, which is just kind of like a managerial team that has been designated by the King, and it serves our political myths because we believe that we elect the government that runs Canada. Well, we do. We believe that. So there's a section of our Constitution that allows this delegation, Section 14 of the British North America Act, which I'll read. It shall be lawful. So the Queen. So the Queen can do this. It's actually allowed. It shall be lawful for the Queen, if Her Majesty thinks fit, to authorize the Governor General from time to time to appoint any person or any persons, jointly or severally, to be his deputy or deputies within any part or parts of Canada, and in that capacity to exercise during the pleasure of the Governor General such are the powers, authorities, functions of the Governor General as the Governor General deems it necessary. I'll just skip ahead, but the appointment of such a deputy or deputies shall not affect the exercise by the Governor General himself of any power, authority, or function. So our Constitution allows the Governor General to designate some executive power to our federal cabinet. Okay? So when this happens, they actually do exercise power, but who's in control? Governor General, the King. And just when it says Queen, it's just we had a Queen at the time this was written, so read King in there now. But thankfully at least our federal cabinet, like, we run our own military, right? Yeah, okay. So, and this is the funny, I was a little amused because when the bombing in Iran started, Carney didn't condemn that. And in our political theory, political theater, like, Carney, puts on the, oh, I hate Trump, and, all of that funny stuff, right? I mean, where does that come from? Like, I'd never heard that before, and I frankly just find it silly. So if some of you, that's patriotic for you, great. I just wish they'd come up with something better. So, but anyway, some people, his supporters, were like, why aren't you criticizing this? Well, because Britain supported it, right? So I'm going to read section 15, and this is how we're going to be at war with Russia. And it's not even like we've got a treaty with NATO, and Article 5 of that treaty says that if one NATO member is attacked, then it's like you're all attacked and you're all at war, right? Like, so we learned in the First World War that when you have binding treaties like that, bad things happen. And so there's no reason bad things can't happen again by us having similar obligations. So I fully expect that there's going to be a false flag attack. Does anyone know what that is? A false flag attack on a NATO country. And it'll be a big one. It'll be a significant attack, and it'll be awful, and we'll all be angry at Russia, and now we'll all automatically be at war. But we'll want to be at war because the media will be explaining how bad this attack that was fully faked and done by us anyway. So a false flag, for those of you who don't know, it's where you basically attack yourself and blame it on the other side to get your populace enraged. The clearest example is the United States went into the Vietnam War because the North Vietnamese attacked U.S. warships in the Gulf of Tonkin. But now it's declassified that they attacked their own ships. They staged the thing. I mean, can you find a serious historian who believes the communists burnt the Reichstag in Nazi Germany? No. Clearly they lit the fire themselves, and then Hindenburg gave them emergency powers. So we're going to be there. But even without a false flag, if Britain goes to war, we're hooped. So Section 15 of our Constitution, the Command-in-Chief of the land and naval militia and all naval and military forces of and in Canada is hereby declared to continue and be vested in the Queen. Isn't that shocking? When you think of our political myths, like almost every Canadian believes that they're a nation. But what nation? Like, let's just use Alberta as an example. So if Alberta's separated, would they pick like a foreign country with a king, like Spain's got a king, and go to Spain and say, look, will you pass some laws that will then govern us? Sure, you can change them whenever you want, but hopefully, you'll listen to how we want it structured. Like, would Alberta do that? Would they call itself a sovereign nation? Oh, and yet please make sure that your king is our executive, and, your king can appoint a privy council that will then actually run us. I mean, sure, he can delegate to our cabinet, some responsibilities while they're sitting. And of course, your king's the head of the armed forces. Like, we never want to be in a position as an independent country where we could have a foreign policy different than you. Like, that's not what foreign countries do, is it? So, like, do you see how ridiculous this is? So, it's hard to say my favorite, but one of my favorites is the spending power, because really it all comes down, money's power, right? And we think that our federal cabinet can just spend billions and billions and hundreds of billions and crazy amounts of money, all well spent. Like, we're always very pleased with how they're doing this, but we think they have the power to do this. So does our federal cabinet have the power to spend His Majesty's money? This one's a shocker. 54 of the Constitution. It shall not be lawful, is how this starts. That's pretty clear, right? It shall not be lawful for the House of Commons to adopt or pass any vote, resolution, address, or bill for the appropriation of any part of the public revenue or of any tax or impost to any purpose that has not been first recommended to that house by message of the Governor General. So this says it shall not be lawful for the government to pass a bill that spends money without first being messaged about it by the Governor General. You didn't know that? So we have been tricked. We have been tricked, and we're gonna, like I say, we're gonna see young people just get all patriotic and rush in. Now, I want to switch to some of the health matters before I go into property issues. And I asked, how many of you think you have sovereignty over your own bodies? And a good part of you did. When you think about your body, I want you to think about it in terms of ownership, because I think it's the way we have to frame it. Is really, I should ask, do you have ownership over your own body? Do you own your own body? And when I ask that question, we kind of have to go, well, like, what is ownership? Like, what's ownership? And ownership is just really the way we describe who has control over something, right? It describes who has control, who has the right to say what happens to something. That's what ownership is. I mean, like in rural land ownership, the landowners are learning really quickly they actually don't have control over their land. Oh, you can't cut down this tree, you can't do this, you can't do that. They're losing ownership as they're losing control over different parts of the property. And we're talking about your body. Ownership defines then who gets to decide what happens to your body. And like, with ownership, we could just use housing as an example, right? Like, so let's say you leased a house for a year. You're not going to be able to put bigger windows in. You're not going to be able to move a wall, like unless it was some exceptional lease, because you're just leasing it. You're just paying for the right to occupy it, not to make changes to it. But clearly the owner can still do that in Canada, right? So do you see how ownership just defines who has control of things? Now, this is probably a safe audience, so, let's just go there. The government wants you sick, and the government wants most of us dead. And to do that, they have to take ownership over our body. But you see, humans they've got this tendency that is inconvenient for governments in that not only do they want to live, but they want to be healthy. No, it's true, they do. So humans, not only do they want to live, but they want to be healthy. And to do that, and this might sound shocking, I hope I don't lose any credibility here, but I'm just going to say it because I've just learned I've just got to tell the truth now. But the truth is humans need certain nutrients to be healthy. Well, this is a shock to Health Canada. No, it's not. It's not, but it's part of the political myth again. And why I'm joking with that is just so that later on you'll come to understand this is all by design. Yeah, so we even have a list of nutrients. We call them essential nutrients. And we use the word essential because if you're missing one of them, you're dead. You're going to get chronically sick for a while first, but you will die. So, and not even a complete absence, but just not enough. It's essential, you'll die. And then there's a whole bunch of other nutrients. You just can't thrive. You can't be healthy. It's not a secret what these nutrients are. And we're supposed to eat to get our nutrients to be healthy. Who manages our food supply? Health Canada primarily, and to a lesser degree, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Now, we all trusted Health Canada. Now, 20 years ago, 20 years ago, when you went into a big grocery store, and even if you bought junk, yeah, you knew you were put on some pounds and have some bad fats and too much sugar in that, but you really weren't worried that the food was dangerous. You really weren't. I mean, honestly, like we're getting a better awareness now of the real intentions, but you can't get what you need to be alive if you're even eating organic and eating well. You know, the U.S. Department of Agriculture routinely surveys the nutrients in the U.S. food supply, which is, you know, for all intents and purposes, the same as ours. And they've been doing it since at least 1900. And they're all published. None of this is secret. And I think it was their 1949 report. They just said, you can't stay healthy by eating anymore because we no longer have enough nutrients in our food for humans to be healthy. But they went a step further and they listed all the chronic conditions we were going to get. So because we're missing this and this, we're going to get this. Because we're missing this and this, we're going to get this. They were trying to sound the alarm because they were actually still acting for the people. So that's 1949. We're in like 2026. Do you think Health Canada doesn't understand that there's a list of essential nutrients that we need? Do you think they misunderstand that there's other nutrients that they need? How have they presided over a complete and steady decline in the nutrients in our food supply to the point where you can't be healthy by eating, even if you're trying to eat healthy? Can this be by accident? No. No, it can't. So the other thing is that our food has become so toxic. Now, and the bright side is I'm now of the opinion Canada has the most toxic food of any country in the world, and it's good to be first. Even if we're not a nation, you know, as a colony, we've made it, we're first. We used to be tied with the U.S., but because of what Kennedy's doing south of the border, they're taking the worst stuff out. We're not, we're doubling down. So we have the most unhealthy food supply in the world. I was interviewing, actually it was last week, Elliot Overton, who, if he's not the world's leading expert in thiamine, you know, vitamin B1, he's one of the leading experts. And he was explaining to me, well, not only are we not getting the nutrients we need, but there's the toxins in our food. We actually need more nutrients just to get rid of the toxins. So our nutrient demand has gone up because of the toxins. So we've got two problems with the toxins. They're poisoning us. They're interfering at the cellular level with what needs to happen for us to be healthy. Plus, they're robbing us of the few nutrients we're getting. And you know, just back to this no nutrients in our food supply. We could be requiring, you know, the labeling of nutrients in the food. So then that would force the farmers to basically broad spectrum fertilize instead of this, you know, where one size fits all and we all farm the same way in every country and it doesn't matter that we don't have the nutrients, that it's not food anymore. How could we possibly be using glyphosate, which is a chelator that actually sucks minerals out of us? And everyone in this room has glyphosate in them, every single one. You could be eating organic, you'd be growing your own food, you've got glyphosate in you. And it's toxic. And it sucks the nutrients out of you. So we've got Health Canada deliberately and by design making it so that we're going to be chronically sick. We have Health Canada deliberately and by design allowing so many toxins in our food that we're going to be sick. So the leading causes of chronic illness, the leading causes of us having to access the medical system are toxins and or malnutrition. Now, fortunately, we've outlawed the healing traditions that can solve those problems. So after the First World War, and you tell me this is by accident, every U.S. state, every province in Canada, no, I shouldn't say every U.S. state, New Hampshire didn't. Every U.S. state but New Hampshire, every Canadian province basically outlawed all of the other healing traditions except for allopathic medicine. So they would pass laws saying only members of the College of Physicians and Surgeons can practice medicine, And they define the practice of medicine so broadly that it basically covers diagnosing, treating, recommending, whatever. So advertising. I mean, even now in Quebec, a naturopathic doctor, Annie Janot, is awaiting sentencing for practicing medicine because she's not a medical doctor. And the trial wasn't about is she saving lives, because we know naturopathic doctors save lives, like people who had been left to die by the medical system. No, that wasn't the issue. Has she taken people that were totally disabled by the medical system and restored them to health? Because we know naturopathic doctors do that. No, that wasn't the issue. Is she qualified to do it? No, that's not the issue. Are you a medical doctor? No, you're guilty. And the Quebec Court of Appeal said, no, you're guilty. And so now she's waiting sentencing. And, well, it's every province, it's illegal. Some provinces have carved out some exceptions so naturopaths can do a little here and there. But we deliberately outlawed all of the other healing traditions except allopathic medicine. And this was a part of this branch. So let's make sure that everyone's malnourished and will become chronically sick. Let's toxic overload them so they're going to get chronically sick. And then let's make sure that we don't have the healing traditions that are trained in nutrition. So when I say allopathic medicine, some of you are going to go, what is he talking about? I've never heard that term. It's a philosophy of healing. And it's the philosophy of healings for our doctors, our medical doctors. And in the allopathic philosophy of healing, when somebody comes to you and they're suffering, whatever you do, don't you dare cure them. No, we don't do that here. We're allopathic doctors. No, literally, this is their philosophy. When somebody comes to you and they're suffering, don't cure them. What the philosophy is let's address the symptoms. So we'll alleviate their suffering by addressing the symptoms, but we won't cure them. Which is why medical doctors aren't trained to identify nutritional deficiencies. It's why medical doctors aren't trained. Like, there's a couple rare exceptions. They're not trained to address toxic overload. And they're not trained to cure. But if you were going to, as part of your plan, to only have your medical system use surgery and chemical drugs, it's the only healing tradition you can use. Because all the other healing traditions, they want to cure you. Every other healing tradition will want to cure you. And then when we're talking about how this isn't by accident, we have government-funded healthcare. If we had any say, if every Canadian was asked, what healing tradition do we want to adopt for our government-funded healthcare? Not a single Canadian would pick the allopathic philosophy of healing, not a single one. So how is it that our government-funded healthcare that we have to pay for, regardless of what you think about that, we have to pay for it, we can't go anywhere else? Like, there's medical tourism because we're limited. A friend of mine went to Mexico for cancer treatments a couple of months ago. Like, this is common. So we're locked into this system, and the system has adopted by design, by outlining the other healing traditions and adopting it in our government-funded healthcare, this tradition that refuses to heal. And not a single one of us would do that. How is that possible? In every province and nationally. Do you think our government doesn't know? So let's then talk about, the legal treatments, because this is another part of the trap. So they're deliberately making us sick. We're chronically ill. And we all know that if we engage the mainstream medical system, which is the only system that the government pays for, that we're going to be offered either surgery and/or chemical drugs that had a patent when they were approved. Like we'll note, if somebody here has a heart attack in the rest of the hospital, surgery and/or chemical drugs. Your high blood pressure goes off, surgery and chemical drugs. You got screened for cancer and they text you saying it's stage 4, surgery, chemical drugs. This is an odd exception, but it's rare. So we have this drug approval game. And what the game is we've created what's called a drug model. And this is all by design. So the first part of the drug model is we define drugs so broadly that it includes anything that you would use to prevent yourself from getting sick or to cure yourself, to heal. So, and I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. You look so dehydrated. Can I give you some water? No, I'm just kidding. I'm using you as an example. If I gave her some water, I would be breaking federal law because I would have been giving her water to treat dehydration, and I would be breaking the law. So I'm making the point, everything, essential nutrients that you need to survive are drugs in Canada. Because you take essential nutrients to stay healthy. That makes it a drug. Okay? This is the crazy, we're in clown world. Okay, we're in clown world. Even water's a drug. Essential nutrients are a drug. You know, we're the NHPPA, Natural Health Product Protection Association. Most natural health products are just essential nutrients you need to survive. It's a narrow little part of our natural remedies. Most of it's just essential. We're just talking about nutrition. So nutrition is a drug. The next thing you do is you make all drugs illegal and make it so that the only drugs we can access, chemical or natural, are drugs approved of by the government. And how you do that, it's really simple, is you just pass a regulation saying you can't sell a drug without Health Canada approval. Well, but they do that to protect us, right? Because then if Health Canada approves it, we know that it's safe and effective. Sorry, it's hard to talk when you're smiling. So they've made it. Now, you know, we might approve of that for novel chemicals, right? Like we might. It's still a bad idea because if Health Canada approves it, that's a signal to us that it's okay. It shields them from criminal prosecution. It shields them from civil lawsuits. It's another burden. No, this professional regulatory body approved it. How dare you sue us? Sue them. I mean, our data showed them it was safe and effective, right? So everything's a drug. All drugs are illegal. And then the next thing you do is you deliberately make the approval for serious health conditions. You deliberately make the approval for serious health conditions so expensive that the only drugs that get through the process have a patent. I know we got a young crowd here, but in the lifetime of everyone in this room, the only drugs that have been approved for serious health condition, with the exception of Premarin, had a patent when it was approved. So our law would be more honest if we changed the Food and Drug Act so it explicitly said it is illegal to treat serious health conditions with anything but chemical drugs and surgery. Because that's the reality. And that's why we all know intuitively if we have to go for something serious, we're only going to be offered chemical drugs and or surgery. Well, this is by design. Like, it's by design. And then the next part of it is, which, you know, just so you know, like, so the NHPPA, and please buy our T-shirts because they're from our last tour and we're a poor group. But we had held this tour. We started in Victoria and we drove to Ottawa with the third largest paper petition in Canadian history. And we held events along the way. And before we left, we pre-taped a whole bunch of people telling their health stories, which I'm going to get into in a second, is illegal, and then I'm going to tell you a couple of stories, and you go, what the heck? So, but we're going across the land doing We're doing it because it's illegal to share the information. So I'll talk about the censorship first, because that's the next part of the drug model. Is we've structured it so we can the only legal treatments are chemical drugs, which also just publicly funded healthcare. Most of our approved drugs are by prescription only. Like, sure, you can go to the drugstore and get Tylenol and aspirin and that, but I hope you appreciate, like 99% of the money spent on drugs and that is the prescription drugs. Like, that's the real big deal here. Can you get prescription drugs outside of the government-funded healthcare system? No. Only medical doctors can write prescriptions. You can only get it through the medical doctors or the hospitals. So by definition, listen carefully, by definition, government-funded healthcare is the marketing and distribution arm of the chemical pharmaceutical industry. Now, almost everyone in this room, before I finish the lecture, will go, oh yeah, the pharmaceutical companies have captured Health Canada. We have regulatory capture. I don't believe that's true. I believe that Health Canada has captured our government, which is doing all of these other things and doesn't want us healthy, has captured the pharmaceutical companies. That they're part of the government plan. That's what I think. So this goes beyond regulatory capture. This goes beyond regulatory capture. So let's talk about the censorship. So remember, you have to have Health Canada approval to sell vitamin C. You've got to get a license to sell a chemical drug. You've got to get a license. Well, when Health Canada issues a license, there's a label claim. So let's say an antidepressant. So a chemical drug company gets an antidepressant approved. They'll get a license to treat depression, or they can call it an antidepressant. So Health Canada takes the position, once you're approved, all you can say is the label claim. So in that case, all the chemical drug company could say is it's an antidepressant. It treats depression. For natural products, because we can't get through that process, we can't get approved to treat serious health conditions, we get approved for what's called structure function claims. So there's an Alberta company called True Hope that I have no doubt in my mind has the best treatment for bipolar disorder in the world, like bar none. And it's a vitamin and mineral supplement. I think their approved label claim is something like supports mental health and well-being. Like, it's meaningless. But anyway, that's all they're allowed to say. Well, this censorship is absolutely necessary for you to maintain your confidence in the government-funded system. You're in a trap. You're in the matrix and you can't see it. You see that cat kind of twitches and there's some glitches in the matrix to tell you there's a problem, but you can't see that you might as well be in the boxcar going to Auschwitz because they're killing you. They're just doing it in a different way. There's probably no one in this room who actually understands what it's like to be healthy anymore. You know, you were asked to turn your cell phones off. It's amazing that competent adults with two neurons that can still touch together would carry a device that transmits at 2.4 gigahertz. Like, how much money? Like, are they paying you $6 million a year? Like, how much are they paying you to carry that? Like, really? It's amazing. And we can do these communications safely, but we're not. 2.4 used to be British military weapons frequency. It's the same frequency if it's your microwave oven. So, you know, I was telling you about the Health Show. We had Professor Alan Castles from University of Victoria. He was testifying that just the antidepressants alone, the chemical antidepressants, are the third leading cause of death in Canada. And after the show, I approached him. I know Alan. We've worked together on some things before. And, this made me curious. Well, he put me on to Professor Goetz at the University of Copenhagen, who's a medical doctor that's an expert in this, who's basically saying, well, Yeah, the antidepressants, third leading cause of death. But the chemical drugs altogether are the leading cause of death in all Western nations. And let's say he's wrong. Let's say they're only the second or third leading cause of death. The point is they're horrifically dangerous. One of the most dangerous things you can do is go to a medical doctor. Full stop. So here we are, we're all malnourished, we're all filled with toxins, which makes us chronically sick. You have to supplement. You're going to be chronically sick if you don't supplement, and if you're chronically sick already and you actually go to a naturopath, you're going to be put on a nutrition regimen because you can't be healthy without it. So how do they maintain confidence? How is it that the leading causes of death are these chemical drugs, that they're the only things that are approved, that our healthcare system, that's all they offer, and then we can't talk about it? And we can't talk about it to maintain confidence in the system. So I'm going to tell you a true story that's shocking about censorship. So some years ago, I'm involved in a federal court case against Health Canada. And Health Canada hires an expert. He was a psychiatrist who ran a company that had psychiatric drugs approved by Health Canada. So he's an expert in getting chemical drugs through this drug approval process. And I really had to hammer the guy. Like, he was just a total hack, and I had to get it so the court would just give no weight to his evidence. So I'm examining him for days. I think it was 3 days. Like, it was grueling for both of us. And at one point, under oath, he starts complaining to me about how hard it is to get new antidepressants approved of by Health Canada. And there's a transcript of this. Like, and he goes, I got to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing that the drug works. And he's right, he does. And like, when he's telling me this, I know he means, okay, like a short trial, like 2 or 3 weeks, because they're relying on the placebo effect. It'll be like a very healthy population to minimize any safety signals. And it'll be completely subjective. So they're just hoping that the drug group is going to experience placebo more than the sugar pill group and subjectively report more positive symptoms. And then if there's enough of a statistical separation between this subjective reporting, then we pretend that means the drug works. Like, as a matter of, oh no, this works. It's effective. That when someone, safe and effective, oh, that's the effective part. So most antidepressants, like the clinical trial, will not have been even a month. And so the approval for use will be for like 2 or 3 weeks. But your psychiatrist will say it won't even start working for a month and a half, 2 months. We got to load you up here. It's not approved for that. But anyway, he's complaining to me. I got to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing the drug works. So I run 8. All at the same time. I start with 8. I run 8 double-blind clinical trials to get those 2. That's interesting, isn't it? Well, we haven't even got to the good part, but isn't that interesting? Because, okay, so the other 6, they could show the sugar pill works better than the drug. They could be inconclusive. They could show the drug works better than the sugar pill, but the safety signals were a little inconvenient. They could be a combination of that. Here's the fun part. If they're approved, it's illegal for the drug company to share those 6 failed clinical trials with you. Because that's not saying antidepressant. That's not the label claim. Now, the researchers are free to publish them. For some reason unknown to me, they publish the favorable trials. They don't publish the other ones. I'm not sure what's going on there. So, so do you see the censorship? You can't know then, right? Now let's take True Hope as an example. I shared with you, so it's a vitamin mineral supplement, perfectly safe. It's sold in health food stores to help support mental health and well-being. Do you know there are 32 peer-reviewed journal publications on that product And some in blue chip journals like Journal of Psychiatry, Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology. Now the fun part is all 32 of these studies have been funded by governments around the world, including the Alberta government. Alberta government coughed up a whack of cash to run a double-blind clinical trial out of Children's Hospital. It's illegal for True Hope to share the government-funded, peer-reviewed research with you. Isn't that great? Do you see how we're in a trap? And the thing is lives are being lost. I'm going to share with you 2 stories. I'll start with one that's a little lighter, although it's life and death, and then one that is, it's still troubling me. So I want to talk about Marion Laderoute. So we held this health show. It's online. You can watch it. It'll change your life. And what we were doing is the people that know that lives are being saved with natural health products, the people that know, you got disabled guy becomes perfectly well, like where the medical system is 100% failing them, the people that know are the medical practitioners and the manufacturers. But if those people share that information with you, Health Canada shuts them down. Like, in 32 years of legal practice, I've run interference with Health Canada for natural health practitioners and manufacturers more than likely all other Canadian lawyers combined. I mean, I've done this for 32 years. Almost 100% of my files, it was because they were telling the truth, not because you can cure people, you can heal people, you just can't share it. So, yeah, so let's talk about Marion Laderoute. Funny enough, at the time of her story, she's working for Health Canada in Ottawa, right? It's kind of ironic. So, and she's a PhD immunologist, big scientist, and she's working on an important project. And she gets chronic fatigue syndrome, and really bad. Like, she can't sleep at night at all. Like, at all, none. Can't sleep at night. She can nap some during the day, but she can't sleep a wink at night. And just to give you an illustration, she was getting fed up because she was so tired. All she could do was work. Like, she couldn't do anything outside of work. She said, all I could do, I had no more resources other than just working. That was the only part of my life. And she gets fed up. She's a young woman at the time. And she decides, no, I am going out for dinner with a friend. I'm going to do it. So she takes the day off work so she can nap as much as she can during the day. And she goes out for dinner with a friend. They're in the restaurant having a nice dinner. She passes out, face plants into her food. Can you imagine? So that's it. All she's doing now is working. She said, at the end of the work, everyone would get in their cars at Health Canada and drive home. Well, she couldn't. She'd have to nap so she would feel rested enough that she wouldn't pass out on the drive home. And the leading Canadian expert on chronic fatigue syndrome was in Ottawa, and he says, I don't have a treatment for you, Marion. And I asked her, and you can watch the video, she was quite clear, she was going to kill herself. She was not going to carry on with that life. And then she comes across St. John's wort. Within 24 hours, she's sleeping. 20 years later, she's never looked back. Life and death. Now, this is a light life and death story. Let me tell you an awful one. Not that was awful enough, sorry. Marion, so we're having we're stopping at different parts as we're going across the country. And we're having a live event in Grand Prairie. And one of the people who spoke in Grand Prairie, her name was Karen Peters. And she described, well, I had rheumatoid arthritis. And like really bad. She says, it's like I got golf balls in the bottom of my feet and my hands are like twice the size and I'm in chronic pain all the time. And her medical doctor explains to her, well, this is a progressive disease. So there's no cure. This is progressive. Karen, you will end up in a wheelchair. And this will kill you. But we can try and slow the symptoms with some chemical drugs. So he puts her on a couple of chemical drugs. One of them is a drug, it's a chemotherapy drug called methotrexate. And like she's telling me this in the interview before we go on the stand. I was like, what the heck? What are you talking about? And she says, so for a full year, she's getting injected with this methotrexate. And she said that for 2 or 3, actually I think it was 3 or 4 days a week, she was so sick she wished she was dead. And then after a year, a friend convinces her to see a naturopathic doctor. And she says, the first thing I told the naturopathic doctor is I have an incurable illness. And she says, the first thing he told me was, well, there are no incurable illnesses, and then he cured her. And she's no longer suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. She's on no chemical drugs. And this naturopathic doctor said to her, if you had stayed on that methotrexate, it's not if you would get cancer, it's when. Like 100% you're going to get cancer. Well, I'm rattled by this. Is just before the Thanksgiving weekend. So Teresa and I, we come back. We're got a couple of days in Edmonton. I'm actually researching this now. Like I actually wasn't sure I believed the story. And like, no, we give rheumatoid arthritis patients chemotherapy drugs. Like you're better off getting diagnosed with cancer. You're only going to be on chemo for 3 or 6 months, not the rest of your life till we kill you with the drugs. So we carry on our way. Teresa and I were dragging this Volkswagen van across the land, and we end up in Ottawa on Parliament Hill on October 23rd. We're dropping off. We're having an event in front of Centre Block to hand off the 3rd largest paper petition in Canadian history, just calling for health rights. And I tell that story at the event. I tell Karen Peters' story because it's still in my mind. I can't get it out. And now we're packing up, we're done, we've handed the petitions off to the MP, and this lady comes up to me, her name's Nelda, and she's weeping. She is weeping. Like, so I gotta be ginger here and tender, and what's going on? And she says, you told my story. Rheumatoid arthritis, methotrexate, but she said they took my breasts. Okay, now I'm getting angry here. Because how many Canadians right now are suffering with rheumatoid arthritis, and we're injecting them with chemotherapy drugs weekly, and they're going to get cancer and they're going to lose their breasts? Like, one's too much, but what is it 10,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000? And they don't know. They'll be hopeless. Like you should have heard the Crohn's stories. We had people that had suffered terribly with Crohn's for like decades. They could never go to their kids' hockey game. They could never go out for supper with their spouse. And then I can be solved with nutrition, right? So people don't know because it's illegal to tell. And do you see this? I'm just giving this example because we're in a trap. We're in a trap. Yeah, I mean, we're in a trap. And we're killing people, and people are suffering. So, how much time do I have left? What time is it? I'm hoping I can... Oh, yeah. Oh, we're doing good. Are you guys doing okay? Because I want to get to... No, but this was important. Like, so ownership, please sign up to our newsletter. And the reason is this. We're the only group out there fighting for access to natural remedies. They're life and death. It's life and death. And we have campaigns. So like right now, MP Blaine Calkins in Lacombe, Pinoca, has a private member's bill to move our natural remedies back out of the dangerous therapeutic product category like thalidomide and Vioxx, back into their own little category where Health Canada has much less power over them. And like, remember, we're talking about vitamin C, vitamin D, stuff like this, right? So he got it into committee. It's almost never that a private member's bill gets into committee, but it got into committee because we have people writing to the Liberal government members to get it into committee. Well, now it's in committee. We've got a campaign to send letters to the Standing Committee on Health saying, like, don't screw this up with amendments. Let's pass it back to the House. And also, we're inviting people to write briefs. Like, if you have a health story where you rely on it, we want to write brief. And we actually have a long document. Here's their rules for writing. Here's what you can write if you're an individual. Here's some other themes if you want. And we make it easy. So if you went to our site, which I don't have up, but we've got 3 campaigns. If you went to the letter writing site campaign, we have an e-letter. All you have to do is give your name and your postal code, and 2 minutes later, you've sent a letter to 10 members of the Standing Committee of Health. And then our system will prompt you, well, do you want to print it off and mail it? Because that's even better. And then if you want, we have social media posts you can copy and post. Like, we make the campaigns easier, but we need you to participate. And that's why we want you to subscribe to our newsletter. We only send 1 newsletter a week. Like, unless we were in the middle of the charter tour, I think we sent 2 a week. But you're not going to go, oh, I got to desubscribe. We don't do that. But we run campaigns. And some people will be here because we put out in our newsletter, hey, we're going to be in Calgary type thing, right? Like, so I see some heads nodding. So we let you know what we're doing, and we ask you to participate in campaigns. So let me get to, I think I've made it clear you don't have ownership over your own body because you can't choose how you're going to treat yourself when you're sick. The information's kept from you, and they're in the process of taking our natural remedies away. That's a different lecture, but you can learn about it on our site. They're phasing in this new way of regulating that is going to really take our products away. But I want to segue into kind of the land rights issues, because what I've come to realize in the last maybe 6 weeks is they're further down the road in completely destabilizing in us. Like, so the health is in feudal Japan, the samurais ate meat, the serfs didn't. That's because the higher up you eat on the food chain, the stronger you are, and you're able to dominate by keeping the serfs weak. Same thing in feudal Europe. Same thing in Western civilized nations. Do you think it's an accident that our food supply is toxic and devoid of nutrition? See, we intuitively crave meat and fat because that's how we're going to be healthy and most robust and be able to dominate. Our junk food is rich in fat and carbohydrates that trick us into thinking we're eating meat, so we become addicted to them, but it actually keeps us subservient. So it keeps us unhealthy and non-vibrant. As I say that, I doubt there's anyone in this room that will remember what it feels like to be healthy, if for no other reason you can't because of the immense electromagnetic signals around, let alone the nutrition. So this is part of the control grid. Now, what's really frustrating for landowners, especially people that have owned land like 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and you could buy a parcel of land, you could build whatever buildings you wanted on it, you could subdivide for your kids, you could plant trees wherever you wanted, you could drill a well wherever you wanted. You didn't have to fence off this or fence off that. You had freedom, or you had ownership, you had control. Now, I forgot to say, when I was going through the Constitution, the king owns all our land. Like, allodial ownership is vested in the king. The king grants us what's called a fee simple. So even if you paid your mortgage off, if you look at your title, it says fee, which is a grant from His Majesty. And simple just means without restrictions. Like, you might have an easement or right of way or something, but generally speaking, most of us have a fee simple. So, but that's not true ownership, and it doesn't mean that the king, through the king's designated representatives in Parliament or the legislatures or municipalities, can't take that ownership away from you. Remembering ownership is just who gets to decide what happens, right? That's ownership, just is a legal way of describing who gets to say what happens with something. We've been led to think it's something that it isn't. Okay? So, but understand, before, when we were able to buy and build and all of that, the powers those that control Canada wanted to build a nation. They wanted an infrastructure. They wanted farms. They wanted food production. We were allowed to do this because that's what they wanted. We are now in a phase where they want to take the country down and remake it. So that's why we have, first of all, they had to get God out of the schools, get God out of the societies, because at the core level, this is a spiritual battle. They had to destabilize the family, and getting God out of the equation, and getting churches so that they no longer participate in politics. Like, do you think the charitable status was to help churches? No, they're afraid to engage in politics because they'll lose their charitable status. The salt has lost its flavor, right? Everything is by design. So let's destabilize the family. Let's confuse youth with gender ideology. Let's flood the country with immigration, like especially since COVID, like the amounts are they are way more than our system could vet, like by geographical, like factors, but deliberately with cultures that share different values, and we're deluded. I mean, is it possible for the federal liberal government to ever lose an election again? Is it possible now? Because they're the party of immigration, and they use government money to fund all these NGOs to tell people that have immigrated it's because of the Liberal Party. You got to vote Liberal, especially if you want your family to come over, if you don't want to get kicked out. And we may have reached that point where it's now impossible, unless like everyone and their dog actually voted, because a very small percentage of the population actually votes. But we may have crossed that Rubicon where we're now a one-party state. Right? We're going there anyway. We're going to full-blown communism. So everyone in this room will have heard of UNDRIP, right? Okay, I was expecting that. Some haven't. But so UNDRIP is just the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And it's a treaty. And Canada has signed on to this treaty. Now, people are aware of the Cowichan decision, right? So there's a decision where a court has basically granted Indigenous people. I don't even know what we're supposed to say anymore. First I'll go with First Nations. I'm relying on that person. But isn't it silly we have to even be worried about it? So, but that's the world we're in, the brave new world. So anyway, so now people in Richmond, like according to the court, the First Nation has actual ownership of their land that's now competing with their fee simple. And nobody knows what that means, except that the First Nation interest is real. And people in Alberta will be going, the next time I go to a public event, I want to hear we're in Treaty 6. We're ceded, right? That's not going to save you here. So, and we all know about what happened with the Musqueam, right? Do you guys all know? But okay. So it's in the news. Just Google it. No, not Google. Use some other search engine. It was just a figure of speech. So the federal government has signed a treaty with the Musqueam First Nations. Now, my understanding is there's less than 2,000. So they've basically given most of Greater Vancouver to this First Nation. It should be on the news every day, front page news, every newspaper, that basically the federal government will not release the treaty. So you actually know it's okay. Like whenever you hide stuff, it's okay. So they've signed a treaty with the Musqueam. Everyone agrees they're doing this and giving the land to the Musqueam. Now, what is interesting here is, let's say you buy the narrative that's that really has been manufactured. Everyone here should go back and read Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, even though it's like probably a 1972 book, it applies. So this narrative's been given to us over decades and decades, which culturally has positioned us where, you know, the courts agree that these rights are there, and definitely anyone coming out of university, oh yeah, rah, rah. But do you understand how destabilizing this is? But let's say the narrative was all true. Like, shouldn't you just go to the Musqueam and say, we're going to give each one of you $100 million? Like, do something. Like, what, you're going to give the property of 2 million homes kind of either full ownership or some type of, like, can they get a mortgage? Are you going to buy property there? Right? Like, do you see, this is deliberately to destabilize. And it's again why I think we're getting close to the end game. So I just want to read to you part of the treaty. 26. Now, as scary as this is, you should at least be comforted in knowing, like, sure, Canada signed on to this treaty, but, you know, Canada's got to go all in on all this nonsense. So and when I say nonsense, you just don't deliberately destabilize the property interests of a nation that's been built on property interests. And you especially don't do it without publicly making it clear what you're doing. So we sign on to this treaty, but then we pass a law obligating the federal government to fully enact this 100%. So it's just called the UNDRIP Act, and it attaches as an appendix this treaty. So the federal government passed a law obligating them to enact this treaty. And I'm just going to read to you one part of this treaty, but it explains why we just gave Greater Vancouver to the Musqueam. So, Article 26. Indigenous peoples have the right to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So, Article 26, Clause 1, they've got the rights to the lands, not even just that they owned, but I mean that they used. So, Article 26, Clause 2, Indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, blah, blah, blah. Oh, now these are interesting words, aren't they? The right to own, use, develop, and control lands. Article 26, Clause 3. States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources. Such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, land tenure systems of the Indigenous people concerned, not the other people concerned. So this treaty obligates Canada to give unceded land back, ceded land back. Like there's parts in Ontario, like we're early on, everyone agrees the king or queen paid full market value with, you know, on small parcels of land that they were happy to give up, and like no, perfectly fair. They have to go back under this treaty. So basically, what is this going to do? Now remember, the goal is moving us into communism. This is brilliant. How do you extinguish land rights? Is where you basically put overlapping rights and confuse everything. And who knows, because remember, ownership is just who gets to control. Well, this says they get to own, control, develop, use. So were you aware that the federal government has basically committed itself by signing onto a treaty and passing a law, which, the way I read it, is going to completely destabilize our land ownership? Well, let's go to One Health. How many of you know about One Health? Okay, no, put your hands up high. How many of you know of One Health? Okay, so this is crazy that you don't know about One Health, because it affects you more than your constitution does. So One Health is the main policy of the World Health Organization. And what One Health says is, well, there's basically 3 groups that we need to protect equally. So any one of these 3 groups can be curtailed if necessary to protect one of the other groups. So humans are in a group, animals are in a group, and the environment's in a group. Well, you can't miss it. Go to the World Health Organization. You can't miss One Health. It's their primary policy. Now, what's fun about it is this is the policy that we're going to use to get farmers off their land. Because, and this is also the policy that, pandemic risk. It's the 15-minute city policy to protect the environment. We have to get everyone off the land. They're clear about this. They want to get the rural people off the land. Well, who's going to make the food? So you've got to consolidate into the big corporate farms so that you can clear people off the land. Well, how do you consolidate people? How do you get rid of small business owners? It's the same playbook every time. We're experiencing it in the natural health products. It's called rent seeking. That's what economists call it. They have a name for it because it doesn't matter what industry. If you want to get rid of the small people, you just overregulate them. It's always in the name of safety. You just bring in stricter and stricter and stricter regulations. The cost of complying drives people out of business, the marginal people. And you also basically spiritually destroy them. So let's say you were a herbalist. I mean, before our regulations came into force, probably the top herbalist in Canada was a guy named Rick De Silva. And he would grow his own herbs and he'd go in wildcraft. Well, he couldn't comply with these regulations, and so now I used to buy his stuff. I can't buy his stuff anymore, just as an example. But so, some tried. They tried to comply. And, you used to enjoy what you were doing, and now all of a sudden, you're spending another 20 hours a week on paperwork and this and that. It sucks your soul. Like we all kind of know this on tax season. It's not just that we spend money. The government creates obligations on us that keep us busy and destroy us spiritually because we know we're just jumping through hoops like a hamster on a thing. So Canada's to part of this, let's bring in One Health. Agriculture, it's provincial jurisdiction. But they passed the Safe Food for Canadians Act and regulations saying, well, no, actually, we've got pandemic risk here. We can't regulate in the provinces, but if any scrap of food's going to cross a provincial border or an international border, then we have trade and commerce power. We have jurisdiction. And so I interviewed a dairy farmer, Tyler, about 3 weeks ago. He can't get paid for his milk unless he complies with this program called ProAction, which is part of this One Health thing through this Canada Safe Food for Canadians Act, because the milk board says, well, some of our cheese, some of our milk will cross a boundary, so all of our milk is covered. Right? Do you see the problem? We've got rid of the small abattoirs. So if you sell a cow to a big abattoir, how do they say that a package of hamburger didn't go from Alberta to Saskatchewan? So basically, with the province of Alberta's full consent and every other province's consent, they're allowing the federal government to reframe agriculture. And how we're reframing it is we're saying, well, because of One Health, because of this pandemic risk, we have to understand that it's dangerous for humans to interact with farm animals. Do you see the reframing? So this ProAction, and you can just go, internet search for ProAction, you'll find it. The the work, there's two parts. There's kind of like the manual. I think it's hundreds of pages of long. And then you have to have a workbook. You have to have all these standard operating procedures. So Tyler's explained it to me, like he had to get a veterinary in, he has to pay for experts to basically identify the biosecurity risks and have all these standard operating procedures to mitigate them. He has to have signs around his farm basically saying keep out biosecurity. He has to have a standard operating procedure if his neighbor comes over for coffee. How is he disinfecting the farm to protect? No, but do you see, it's all nonsense. He says within a mile of him, he knows 2 guys that gave up their quotas because it's too onerous to comply. And they had to go to the big corporate farms, right? So let's just talk about vaccines in the cows. So he said on his farm, and they've been doing this, he's 3rd generation. They've been on this farm since 1950, so 76 years. They love their cows. They know how to keep their cows healthy. That a cow will live on their farm for 20 to 23 years, so they keep their cows. And he says we would vaccinate them once when they're calves with a vaccine called 8-way. And he says the only reason we do this, the only reason, I'm going to go a little longer than 5. Yeah. The only reason we do this is we get what's called blackleg, which can kill some calves. So he says if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't do it. So, but it means that a cow that's 23-year-olds on their farm was vaccinated once 23 years before. Now, don't want to alarm any of you. They also, he says, once a year we sprayed them with ivermectin. And I said, well, when? Can I come and get sprayed? But so that's what they used to do. But now because of this, they had to bring a vet in and come up with this plan. They have to give the 8-way twice in the first year of life, every year after, about 5 other vaccines every year, and a bunch of other drugs. They used to clean the teats with soapy water. Now they have to use, he's grossed out this pre-dip, and he says, the teats are discolored. There's chemicals getting in the milk. It's like, and all for safety, right? And none of us want to drink that milk. And so I asked him, well, has there been any health changes to the herd? And he says, yeah, there's been 2. He says, we're getting scours in our calves, which is just severe diarrhea, way more. And it's taken way longer for the cows to get pregnant. So those are both negative effects. So anyway, the dairy farmers are first. So they're being consolidated. It's going to go to all the other farms, like all this traceability, every chicken, every cow, every pig's going to have to be tagged and reported and all of this. And they're going to get rid of the family farm. And they're going to make our food unsafe. Now, so I actually came to realize, might need to leave the country. We're having that discussion in our house because we could wake up in Alberta and find that all our land has been ceded to, whoever under this treaty. And then now, can I use that? Can I sell that house now? Do I have equity to buy a house somewhere else? Do you see the runway to leave the country now has become really, really short. Now, there's one thing that I have to finish with before questions, and I deliberately try to upset you. It's all true, and and I hope you get more upset as you go on, because this whole drug model, it's a death machine, and it's legal torture and murder. We haven't even talked about MAID. I got to say one thing about MAID before I segue into the destiny. So, regardless of what you think about MAID, do you know what really gets my goat? Is I thought we were just giving people morphine overdoses, right? Because you knew that some hospices and stuff and it's like they're going to go asleep, it's painless, the respiration's going to stop, and it's cheap. It works and it's cheap. So I just thought, okay, once we crossed that Rubicon that we shouldn't have crossed, that we were using morphine. I was horrified. Do you know how we do it? Okay, so we do 2 drugs. The one paralyzes you. You can't blink, you can't move. No one can tell me if you're still conscious. This is the thing that bugs me, right? There's no information of whether you're still aware, and we know from coma patients They feel stuff, they're aware. So we paralyze you, so there's nothing you can do, and then we give you a drug where you slowly drown with your lungs filling up. So could you imagine being aware? Like, that's what's bugging me here. So if anyone can tell me if you're aware or not, it would be really interesting to know. That's what troubles me. So, but anyway, this is all upsetting, and it's all frightening. Like, I fight it. And I pray about it, because we're not supposed to have a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and discipline. And it didn't dawn on me. It came out in an earlier lecture, and I'm supposed to share it with you, is you have no right to be afraid of what's going on. And we got really screwed up with COVID. I think the whole country is in post-traumatic stress and all of this. But you're forgetting who you are, and you're forgetting what time it is. How many Christians are in the house? Okay, so, and if you're not a Christian, are we running out of time? Okay, so good. I don't want to be rushed on this. But it's my last point, and then we'll take questions. I want you to come up to me after this lecture if this isn't true for you. That when you were little, like we're talking, we haven't sent you to school. We haven't socialized you. When you were really little, your earliest memories, you knew you were here for something important. You knew it. You didn't know what it was, but you knew with absolute certainty you were here for something important. And then we send you to school and teach you we're a democracy and representative government and the cabinets and control and whatever else we teach you. Health Canada's there to protect you, all these fun things. And we burden you with work and debt and kids' soccer practice and mortgages. And there would have been times as an adult that you would have thought back and said, I used to think I was here for something important, but I guess I wasn't. Because you don't see how your life could manifest that now, because you're paying the mortgage and going to soccer practice and working late and all of this, and you actually came to believe that you were wrong. So I'm here to tell you, 100%, you weren't wrong. You were here for something important. Now, I'm talking to the non-Christians there, but the Christians, you know that before anything began, that God wrote this book. And you're in the book because he tells you in Psalm 139, you're in the book. Tells you a bunch of other places he purposed specific things for you to do. It's called your destiny. And it's actually necessary for him to do what he wants to do as part of his plan. Now here's how can we be afraid? Because if you at all accept that, whether you believe or not, but you accept, okay, no, I am here for something important. If you accept that you were created to fulfill a destiny at this time, then it means you're the person specifically designed to do what you need to do right here at this time, not at another time. The Holocaust wasn't for you. The Mongols wiping out everyone in the path, that wasn't for you. You got it easy. You're here. No, you got it easy. You become a student of history. Like, what, are we all snowflakes here, but we just look older? You are purposed to be here at this time. And we got through COVID. We're still here. We've got through other things. But the runway's short. So the time for you becoming active, everyone in this room, and you're going to be asked now, Teresa's going to come up here, and you're going to be held to account. Everyone in this room needs to make their full-time focus, whatever it is. It could be SOGI, it could be whatever, land rights, whatever, but you need to become intimately involved in resisting this. and I'll pass it on to Teresa. And then we'll go questions. No, but you want to say that? I guess we're going to questions, and then Teresa will close at the end. So we'll take some questions.
So who has some questions? So if we could just specifically have questions and not a long story. We want the story, but apply to info@nhppa.org, and then we'll hear your entire story. Say, if you can start with your first name, please, or your full name.
It's Sarah. So just very quickly, my understanding is that UNDRIP, Indigenous means anyone born here, that in UNDRIP would have the treaty nations or the Indians sign as Indigenous. And once they've signed as Indigenous, they lose their rights under the Indian Act, and then the government will confiscate their land. I'm assuming that's coming quickly. Is there any way for us to avoid that? And by that I mean we've talked about getting trust funds out of the U.S., putting our properties into trust funds from the U.S. because it's protected by U.S. government. And if that's not possible, where are you and Teresa thinking of going? The only places that I know of, that's an important question for us too. The only thing that I found out is that India and Russia gave their people placebos, so did China, but they want to make them slaves. And the Cook Islands are the only places that I'm aware of. Have you guys decided or thought about where you want to go?
Boy, lots of questions there. So, I actually think that our federal government is an equal to opportunity government that wants to enslave everyone, regardless of their cultural heritage and regardless of how long they wanted to be here. So, you might be right on that. Who knows? I actually think that they're using this to put a different layer of property and confuse everything, right? Because they can't just say you don't own property anymore, this is a communist takeover. They're going to do it differently, and they're going to message it differently, and we've all been groomed for that. But, as you were asking the question, I thought, how is it possible that we're accepting this? Who gives the king the right to destabilize fee simple property rights that, in many cases are over 100 years old, and basically destabilize a whole nation, even if you accepted that narrative? Who gives you the right? Where's that legal authority? Right? And how dared the courts do that? The reality is at the end of the day, we're all here together. You can't have a prosperous society without stable property rights. And, if we need to redress or whatever, but we don't do it by ending our property system and property rights. So we even have to take a step back and say, how does the federal government have authority? I mean, how does the king have authority over our land? A ship arrived, and they planted a flag, and they started living here, and they pretend that somehow gives the king sovereignty. In the U.S. it was more conquest, and they're not shy about that, and we did it more by treaty and purchase and the like, or just occupying and not having treaties. But, at the end of the day, we're here, and we've been here for a long time. So let's say that, we do have an ethical, legal problem. We don't solve that. It's not going to be in anyone's benefit for us to destabilize everything. But we're being destabilized by design, and we need to even be asking, well, do you even have authority to do this? In my mind, the system's losing its legitimacy, and we have to. I challenge everyone in this room to watch Gandhi again. You watched it 30 years ago? Watch it again, and you'll know why I told you to do it. I'm not answering that question. I don't know. I don't know if the U.S. Trust Fund would work.
Hello, my name is Don. Thank you for educating, but the more I learn, the more tend towards almost despair. So my question is, you've taught us a lot. What can you tell us about any small victory or something positive where you feel like there might be a victory coming to make us feel better?
Absolutely, and there's lots of victories.
Yeah, and I hope everyone appreciates that we're in a war, right? It's just, it took us a long time to figure that out because it's not a bombs and bullet war. It's an information war. It's a control structure war. It's a propaganda war. But, you know, in almost every war where an aggressor starts rolling over the other side, it looks hopeless. Like it's almost like a movie script. My favorite one is the Korean War. Like the South Korean and the American soldiers, literally when they looked over their shoulder and said, "Oh, that's the ocean at our back." That was the ocean at their back. Like they literally had been pushed back to the ocean before they held the line and then slowly started going back. I mean, the Second World War, like the German invasion of the Soviet Union. I mean, they just rolled and rolled. And then finally, Stalingrad stalled them. And then finally, they had a tank victory. And then they never lost momentum after that. And for us to turn that tide, every single one of us has to be educating. And you know, in COVID, oh, it was frightful. You didn't want to. I sometimes would wear a mask if I was just going to go get milk and eggs because I didn't want people yelling at me. Well, you know, and you couldn't talk to those people that were. But now, don't talk to your family members. Don't talk to those people. But you can talk to the store clerk. You can talk to anyone about COVID now. You can talk to anyone about COVID now. You can talk to anyone about natural health products. You can talk to anyone about God. Like people just know it's a spiritual war intuitively. That's completely changed. I could, like pre-COVID, could I stand up here and talk about destiny in a natural health lecture? Not a chance. And I didn't. I was lecturing back then. I've been lecturing for 30 years on this. So there are some, first of all, I think we just need to get to that place where we push back. Like where we hold the line and then start pushing back. But it's an information war and it's one person at a time. And there aren't people waking up tomorrow going, you know, I was wrong, I'm going to go get that shot. But there are people waking up tomorrow going, I shouldn't have done that. And I got duped. Like I'm wondering, is the legal community at the point where I could like write articles for legal magazines and maybe do professional development seminars on the fact that the vaccine wasn't proven to be safe and effective, and yet the courts told everyone to take judicial notice of basically a ghost. Like, I'm wondering, are we there yet? We'll get there, but I'm actually thinking it might be possible now because the culture's changing. So we have a campaign right now. Getting that Bill 224 into committee, that's a win. And we formed in 2008 because we needed a group. I promise you we would already be like having almost zero products, except that like the pressure we had people give every year, and some of you are nodding your heads, you know you've been following us for years, you've been writing letters for years, you know that we've stalled it time and time and time again. We push back. But if we weren't pushing back, it would be way worse. So, you know, and some people were woken up in this room today on that issue, and they're going to give us their email address, and they're going to participate in our campaigns, and now that's more pressure. And Teresa's going to tell all of you, it's not enough for you to just do this. I won't. Okay, so I'll leave that.
Don't steal my thunder.
Okay, I won't steal your thunder.
But do share what the MP said with respect to how much.
You share.
So here's the thing. So we're speaking. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're now speaking with MPs. So now MPs are no longer afraid to have a conversation publicly with Shawn Buckley. Now, that might not seem like much, but that's progress, okay? So that's progress. When we spoke with a few of these MPs, one of them said that if they get, and this is directly to you, okay? If they get 10 letters on one particular subject in 1 week, they take notice. 10 letters. Like, that's it. So if you write 10, if they receive 10 letters for 2 consecutive weeks, for 3 consecutive weeks, they're taking that to the floor. I think that the challenge is that we're traumatized and we're afraid. But we're working through that. So I say, hold on. We're in the Great Awakening. Strap in your seatbelt because we're there. And that's what I had to say, just for now. But that's not my closing.
And she's just warming up.
Here's another question.
My name is Barbara, and I don't have a really fixed question, but do you know of the website themythiscanada.com? And there is a video that's been out there. Lifeforce has also promoted this. The myth and Canada is an illusion. Right, it's about the BNA Act and Westminster, and it actually seems to indicate that our Constitution isn't lawful, so therefore we can get out of this.
So is this, can I talk about the Statute of Westminster? I don't want to, and you know why I don't want to? I will. I don't want to because never before have I read an act so wishing it said something that I was told it said, and coming to a very easy conclusion that it didn't say what person after person after person was telling me that it said. Now, I don't have it in front of me, and I haven't read it for a while, but going from, memory when I was reading it is so, what people kept saying is, oh, well, we just have the right to declare that we're no longer part of Canada and we're free and all of this. Britain had an empire. The North America was fairly well advanced. I mean, I was just reading today Lord Blackstone, and he's in his treatise on laws, he's talking about how, the king's claim over the Americas. Well, that's just before 1776. I mean, we had a lot of people, we had a lot of organization, we're just about to have the rebellion. But they also have some territories that weren't so organized. So let's say you're starting a territory, and you're having settlers coming and this and that, and remember, it might take months and months to get information to the UK to make a decision, and then come back, and the settlers need stuff done and this and that. You've got to set up some local authorities to be able to make decisions. Now the problem sometimes is the locals say, we don't have that authority, we're not going to follow that law, and now you have chaos. Now, what the Statute of Westminster did, and it has to be read with another law that it references on this topic, because it's not a standalone thing, it's there to solve a problem. And first thing, when you read it, it says most of it doesn't apply to Canada. So there's actually a section in there that excludes most of it from applying to Canada, because we were already a functioning management structure for the king. That's why we had the BNA Act of 1867 and some tweaks along the way. So what the Statute of Westminster did is basically, for some jurisdictions, said, no, when they pass laws, they're the laws. They can be enforced in the name of the king. They were solving a problem that empires have with locals and local government. You start transitioning things. That's how I read the Statute of Westminster. I wish I read it in that we had an easy out. But, I mean, we're in Alberta, and there's going to be a referendum. Really, at the end of the day, we already had the reference to the Supreme Court of Canada when Quebec was holding referendums. And there's no mechanism for leaving in the British statutes that form our Constitution. But the Supreme Court of Canada said if you had a clear majority, whatever that is, on a clear question, whatever that is, but I think they're saying, no, listen, the people really are voting to leave, then that would obligate Canada to negotiate with the province voting to separate. So, but does that mean it's not going to be ugly? Like, who knows? I don't know. So.
Thank you, Shawn. And I can say that last week when we were in Ontario at an event with Bruce Pardy, another constitutional lawyer, he confirmed the exact same thing regarding Westminster. So here we have another question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine. You know my story. You know my story about healing my child with autism, and I just want to thank you and Teresa and your whole team for everything you're doing. But my question is kind of related. Didn't the woman, Victoria, who called herself a queen, didn't she unenact the British North America Act with something called like the State Revocation Act or something like that, Statute Law Revocation Act in 1893? Didn't she unenact it?
I'm not aware of that. So, and I would be surprised that, you know, the Quebec lawyers and attorney generals going to the Supreme Court of Canada arguing that there has to be some mechanism for them to leave. Nobody would have discovered, including the Supreme Court of Canada, which does a lot of research on these things, that, oh yeah, no, what are we talking about? You can leave. We don't exist anyway. Right? Like, it's just, you know, and it's kind of like there's other, you know, oh, Canada's a corporation, or, you know, and all of this. I take things very practically. There are some people that have guns. We call them the police and the army. And whoever gets to tell them where to point those guns, they're in control. Like, it's as simple as that, right? So, and yeah.
Thank you, Shawn. This is the last question.
Hi, my name is Mitch. I think you asked about why they or signed a treaty with the people in Vancouver. Well, first off, the Native people here are under clan mother law, so they're above corpus juris secundum, first off. Secondly, Native people would never agree or have an agreement as a treaty to land that isn't theirs anyways. So the assumption that the Crown of England or the King or the Queen or whoever at the time basically agreed to a non-agreement, to an untreaty. I myself being well-versed with clan mother law, this is immediately, hang on, sorry. Yes, so my question to you is, if the Native peoples didn't have a treaty or didn't agree to this treaty in the first place, what do you think the mode is of the King or the Crown of England or whoever created this signing or whatever in the first place? So what do you think their motive is? Thank you.
Okay, so that's a good question, and I actually liked your earlier points, because I think it's fair for us to ask, where does the king, or the queen previously, get this jurisdiction? Like, you know, like it or not, it seems kind of funny to me that literally you can sail a ship over and plant a flag and start settling, and somehow that gives the king jurisdiction over this land, right? And, you know, the unceded land, the argument is, well, no, actually, it isn't ceded, so there has to be ownership. And then, but the problem then is how do we even define that? And how do the two act together? And then for ceded, the next argument's going to be, well, but they didn't know. Like, you know, with a contract, you have to know what you're entering in. So first of all, did those chiefs that negotiated, like, really, did they have the authority to enter such a significant thing? Like, that's quite fantastic in itself. We would do the trick where they'd show up and we wouldn't feed them for a couple of days. And then we show hospitality, and that in itself creates a reciprocal burden. And then did they really know, like, what you're ceding over, like, a province over 2 days negotiation? I mean, where you don't understand. So you can see the whole thing's unstable. And my point, though, is yeah, but we've all been here together now. Like, how do we go on? And does the Canadian government have authority? I mean, even if they had authority before, do they have authority now after... Surely the king ceded us fee simple in some cases for, 150, 200 years. Like, so can you go back now? The whole thing seems to be almost like surreal. And so where do I think they're going? I have a mantra, don't look at what people say, look at what they do. And every aspect of what I see the federal government doing is to totally undermine us as a society. And in history, the only reason and by coincidence, this is following the communist playbook perfectly on how you destabilize and take down a nation and then rebuild them to be a communist state. And we're clearly a pan-national state. Our decisions aren't made in Canada's interest, so this has a new kind of ring to it. But I think that they're moving us to be a communist state. Full stop. So do you want to come up now, Teresa? Okay, I'm done. Yeah. So Teresa, come up.
Come back up here. Come back up here. Yeah, right. Sometimes I chase them away. So before everyone leaves, I just want to let you know one little thing more that you may find useful. So my name is Teresa Buckley, and I spend most of my waking days trying to find creative ways to wake people up. For the past 3 years, previous to March of last year, I volunteered full-time with the National Citizens Inquiry. You might not have heard of me. I was in the background. When we went through the country, when we went through in 2023, and afterwards, people would come up to Shawn and people would come up to us, to me, and they would say, yeah, that's great. This is great that you have all of this testimony. For those people who don't know, the National Citizens Inquiry took testimonies. We have over 405 sworn testimonies, all under oath. The Commissioner's report is 6,000 pages, just waiting, and there's going to be a time for that. But people would come up to me and they would ask, that's great that you did that, but what good did it do? And it's okay for them to say that. I get it. I know what good it did. I saw the woman testify in Toronto. Do you know a vaccine-injured woman, you can actually see it coming through their pores. The whites of their eyes are different. Like, you can see it. So I really struggled with this, being constantly questioned about it. So in March of 2025, Shawn and I were released from the National Citizens Inquiry. God released us, and he said it was time to go somewhere else. So Shawn took his focus back to the Natural Health Product Protection Association, and I took a long-needed rest. And then Shawn decided to go across the country, and he wanted to deliver these petitions. And I don't know if he's still here, but it was 157,000 signatures, handwritten signatures that had been gathered since 2008. We presented to Parliament, and they're listening. But as we were preparing to go across the country, I was again struggling with this idea of how do you wake people up? We know the information, we know the censorship, we lived it. So I was really struggling and really fussing. And one night, in the middle of the night, I was woken up. I used to say from a guy upstairs, now I'm just going to say it was the Holy Spirit. And he woke me up and he told me, he said, stop fussing. You see, I complicate everything. He said, stop fussing. It's not actually that complicated. All you have to do is you just have to tell people to tell people. You see, it's just grade 10 exponential math. If each of us in this room, and I noticed the hair color, we have to get the younger people in. If each one of us told someone but gave them the instruction, that's the key. You give the instruction of telling them to tell someone else. And that's how we break out. Because the time for us to have these conversations and to have our meetings, to get our little paper, you know, get the flyer, read it, throw it in the recycle bin, have our safe little conversations with the safe people that you know, those days are done. Those days are done. When we went across the country with the Health Charter Tour, with the Natural Health Product Protection Association, now the thing about natural health products is that 70 to 80% of Canadians use NHPs. This is like a safe topic. It doesn't matter if you're left, right, top, down, whatever. You need vitamins. But when we went across the country, we spoke to everyone, and Canadians and Albertans are sick. They're ill. And they're suffering just like the lady in Toronto. You can see it. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their whites. You can see it out of their skin. The fear is palpable. He told me to tell people to tell people. That's it. That's how we get out. It's not complicated. One other thing he wanted me to tell you is that everyone that's listening to this, you're all on notice. You all are. So on behalf of Shawn and myself and our children and our children's children, tell people to tell people. Thank you.
The lawyer with all his notes. The lawyer with all his notes. Thank you, everybody. Just a couple of announcements here before we go. How many know of Edelweiss, which is a German food store on 20th? Okay, they have products that do not have GMOs in it. Their bread and their flour is great. I buy it all the time. There's no glyphosate in it. Did anyone miss out on the beef order here? If you are, please see me afterwards. There's quite a number that have added to it. I just want to tell a quick story. If people would please sit for just one moment until we finish, that would be most appreciated. I was very sick with thyroid about a year and a half ago, to the point I literally laid on the couch day in and day out. I couldn't move. I was that sick with it. The doctor put me on a medication that did nothing for me, and many, many women take it. It didn't work. He put me on another one. It made me suicidal. So for 3 months, I didn't want to live. That's how bad so many medications are and how they affect our body. So I eventually figured out something that works for me. I'm back to being what my friends used to call the Energizer Bunny. So I'm off to the races again. But if you're having thyroid and you want to know what I did, you're free to welcome to call me or email me. Next month, we're going to be selling water. We've had a few requests for that. I didn't know if the building would permit that, but yes, they are. It'll be $1 a bottle. I have a door prize here from Dr. Bob Dixon, who's one of the authors in here. Does anybody have a birthday today? Yes? No? Yes? Birthday today? Okay. Anybody have a birthday yesterday? Tomorrow? Okay, we've got a winner back there. This is Fluoride Harm, Suppressed Science and Silenced Voices, a collection of 21st century essays. Our next meeting is May the 18th. So we present Grant Abraham and Tim Stein, who produced Canada the Illusion, along with the late Doug Force. So the Action Market, there's a few people left over there, but some have already left, but that's okay. Our email and phone number, if you have any questions, are on the website, which is act-now.net. And let's give a final thank you to Shawn and Teresa for their wonderful evening here. It was absolutely awesome. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you May 18th back in this gorgeous room. Safe drive home, everybody.
All right. Oh. So thank you for tuning in, guys. It was kind of different what people usually hear and talk about and everything. So I'll be live streaming tomorrow an independence meeting on in Calgary at 7 p.m. tomorrow from Calgary. Same for Wednesday. That's going to be in Redcliffe, which is not too far from Medicine Hat, as well as Fort McLeod on Thursday. So looking forward to see you then. And also, yes, two things as well. I'm going to streaming an event for the Centurion program on April 29th. So if you want to take a look at this, that would be fantastic. That's going to be in Edmonton, by the way. Jason Levine's going to be there, and other speakers as well too. The list is being building up, and yeah. So that's what I have to today. And thanks for tuning in. I'm going to pack up my little things here, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7. For tomorrow at 7, that's going to be. Let me check. I'm just going to put on the chats here. 1 second. So tomorrow in Calgary, that's going to be at the Fresh and Local market. That's at 426 at 12445 Lake Fraser Drive in Calgary. So I'll be there. For Wednesday, that will be at the German Canadian Harmony Club in Redcliffe. And for McLeod, that's going to be at the Fort McLeod District Community and Health Society. And that's where they have the pierogies as well. So you want to take a look and eat some good, nice pierogies. I can meet you there. So thank you very much for tuning in. And we'll see you tomorrow then and next week then. See ya.